I met a Gypsy.
Right, hey, we got the boys from what do we call the business these days? Is it still AME? Is it
SX Global?
SX Global. So we're here with the SX Global boys. Second time on the podcast for these two. Last time they were in here, we were talking about the upcoming Marvel Supercross event. Smashed that out of the park. The boys are on to bigger and better things. Now they're running a World Supercross Championship. I don't know that much about it. I've purposely stayed away from the info. So if I seem super ignorant, it was just because I knew at some point we were going to do this podcast, so I just wanted full fresh slate. So, boys, talk to me. What are we doing?
It's good to catch up, Jess.
Yeah, you too, mate. Yeah, I mean, it's been a wild journey. We were pumped on the AusX Open, obviously, in 2019, and it ended up being a great success. You know, we chatted to you beforehand, and we had 35,000 people there at Marvel Stadium, and that was epic. But we even leading up to that, for a couple of years, it had plans to go international. We'd been looking into it, which I think we spoke about.
Yeah,
we'd been to Singapore, to Thailand, to Japan. Basically, Sando and I, noticed that the US Championship, the AMA Championship, hadn't left the US for a while. And we're thinking, based on our own events, we knew that there's a market and interest and fans outside the US. So our idea was to go find, capitalize on the fact that there's no events outside the US really. And our own event kind of proved that worked.
There's an appetite,
Yeah, so we'd started that sort of plan before then, and which is why we brought Tony Cochran on in the first place, to try and help us expand internationally. And we got to New Zealand, as you know, and we had New Zealand and Australia, but we were looking into Asia particularly. But then COVID kind of put a big stop to everything that we were doing, like it did everyone for events.
Yeah.
And then soon after all of that, and we were planning to get the AusX Open up, as we, were for 2020 and 2021. But then when Feld announced that they were going to, part ways with FIM on the World Championship rights, we got together with Tony and we're like, man, we got to get after this, because it was the one for us to expand internationally. It was the biggest challenge we had, is what are we going to call it? They've got the World Championship rights. How are we going to do this? Are we just going to call an international championship?
FIM Asia Pacific, for example.
Yeah.
Originally, we were FIM Oceania.
That's right.
For Australia and New Zealand, and then we were going to go for FIM Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
But then that came up in May last year, didn't it?
Yeah, and so pretty much straight away from there, we just got to work. Basically had parallel plans. We got to win the rights from FIM, and we've got to find a big financial backer to make it happen and to do it at the scale that we want to do it. And by December, I think 24th, literally, was it like Christmas Eve, we signed the shareholders agreement, and the FIM rights had been signed the week before that or something.
Yeah.
And from then it was a done deal. So we've just been going flat out since.
It was a crazy timeline. Like, it was application to the FIM in August, triggered a global tender in September, and then we weren't notified, formally, and starting to do a contract with FIM until probably November, to Adam's point. And then
pull this down a little bit.
That ran all the way through to, then we were doing the financial partner with Mubadala as well at the same time. So it was a pretty crazy year last year. There were so many moments when we didn't think it was going to happen, and then for it to happen, like Adam said, just before Christmas, and then, okay, now this happened. Now we've got to roll this out. And we're going to move
now we've got to do everything that we
quickly.
said we were going to do.
And now we've got to actually figure it out. So was there other people competing for the license, essentially, to call it the Global Supercross? Like, was there much interest in other parties, or had you guys kind of just like swooped in and just...
Well, they did the global tender, the FIM did.
Yeah.
I think the advantage for us, this whole opportunity has come up because of the pandemic, we believe. And we believe Feld probably looked at the FIM rights potentially as a cost-cutting exercise initially, amongst other issues they would have had that we're not across. But at the time, other global promoters are probably already suffering through the pandemic, having financial struggles, as every championship was, to put on events without crowds. So the timing for us to be a new company with significant financial backing was really unique. And I think for the timing, especially, it was a great opportunity for us. And then for the FIM, I think because we obviously led with Tony Cochran, he's our president, but we brought other really notable directors on board, with Tom Potter, who's had over 25 years experience in Formula One, and then also Tavo Helmond, who's had a strong relationship with Bernie Ecclestone his whole business career. He's been instrumental in the growth of Formula One in the USA with Circuit of the Americas, and also helping with the Mexican GP. He's advised the Miami GP. So we brought on really, really critical directors, and then obviously with Mubadala Capital as well, it's been a very unique proposition. And then with our history and I guess our success with Australia and New Zealand, we were respected from the industry as well, and I think the FIM as well. So it all sort of combined to where we are now, which is really exciting.
So how does the process work, like financial backing, when you talk about that? Like, how does, I guess, explain maybe like the how the financial world of this works, because this isn't a thing where you guys are trying to, like, it's not like a backyard startup. It's like a t-shirt company where you start with 50 t-shirts and then you go to 100 t-shirts and then you got 150. Like, it's not really the model that you guys are doing.
It's not what it was. For
I think, and I think the AusX Open was that, where we kind of bootstrapped it through, and, Sando and I had a little bit of investment at the start. But then we bought out that partner right at the very beginning, and then since it's kind of just bootstrapped along using sponsorship cash flow and get it going. But to your point, you can't launch a global championship. You can't onboard the team, the world-class team that we need, the staff that we need. You can't support the teams the way that we are without solid financial backing. So really, what it come down to, and Tony's brought in his old CFO from Supercars, a guy named Ken Jeffress, who's super experienced, and they've kind of rolled this thing out before when they took over Supercars. Tony bought Supercars for 55 grand or something like that, sold it for 310 million.
That's insane.
But grew that sport and that property, into what it was, into international events and things back in his day. So, really it's kind of like build a financial model and a plan for, long term, multiple years, 5 to 10 years at least for the initial financial model. And, get to work on how we're going to roll this out, how we're going to, attract the teams, we're going to financially support them, and how, it becomes a profitable, enterprise over the next 3 to 5 years, as opposed to, hey, we've got to do event by event, we've got to make money on this one, and that's how we'll fund the next one. Like you couldn't do a world championship that way. So we sort of learnt how to scrimp and save to get to where we are now, but then we bring in an investor like that, and it's like, okay, now it's time to get the right team. We've hired an incredible team from our COO, who's formerly Nitro Circus. Steve Rogers just joined us. He's amazing. The CFO, Ken, is previously Supercars and IndyCar around that time. Our head of broadcast is amazing. I'm not sure how much we can talk about that yet, but Sando's onboarded. A lot of experience that you couldn't do without sort of enough cash to be able to bring those people on to begin with, and that way we can, hit the ground running straight up.
And so who's the company that is involved on that financial side, and like, do they have a history in this sort of stuff? Like, does then that company have like a say in what goes on at all in some way, because I guess there's, you see a company like the UFC, they were fully privately owned, and then they got bought out by essentially like an entertainment company, and it's like they're still run by the UFC, and that's still Dana White's the president, but then there's kind of this party here. So is that, I guess, just trying to understand like the landscape,
Yeah, so it's Mubadala Investment Company is a sovereign wealth fund in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
So it's a sovereign wealth fund. It's not private equity, so it's slightly different, obviously. And then we're part of Mubadala Capital, or the Mubadala Capital is the company that's invested in us. So it focuses just on sports, media, and entertainment. So interestingly, they invested in UFC in the early years. They were one of the financial partners that backed UFC. They've done similarly with New York Yankees. They've done similar with
Manchester City Soccer.
Yeah, Manchester City Soccer Group, the Formula One, so Abu Dhabi, and also the Brazilian Formula One as well. And then they've invested in IMG Endeavour, one of the largest, obviously, agencies in the world, and they've invested got a pretty big investment in Thrill One as well internationally. So that's what owns Nitro Circus and Nitro World Games and Nitro Rallycross. So their fund, the Mubadala Capital, are with us. The directors that are on our board, they're all sports entertainment professionals. So they're only focused on sports, media, and entertainment. And because it's a sovereign wealth fund as well, they're obviously not wanting to make bad investments, but it's a bit different to private equity, where you'll come and you'll try and cash up in 3 to 5 years. This is a really exciting opportunity because they are in it for the long haul.
And so maybe explain what a sovereign wealth fund is then.
It's just basically, it's like government money effectively, or it's the wealth of that country or Abu Dhabi. So it's family and or government wealth. So it's not a private equity firm in the sense that they have to present back to shareholders and they have to make a profit, and shareholders are buying in to make money just like they would a stock or another, publicly listed company. So it's quite a bit different and it's very unique, and we're really excited because the two directors on our board, Matt Kim, he heads up the whole fund, so he's on our board, which is really exciting, and he's obviously very experienced in a lot of acquisitions of so many different sport, entertainment and media, portfolios and properties, which is great. But then also Russ Pillar, who's also our chair, he headed up Virgin Group, worked with Richard Branson. He's, also ran the LA Marathon. He sold it to Mubadala and now works with them directly. So they're very experienced, but they're not like a private equity person that's, buying.
They're not bean counting.
Different, exactly.
They're cool. They're both Americans. They're legends. They're investing into what they believe Supercross can be. And before we approached them, they didn't really know much about it at all. And then they're like, this is insane. These guys are insane. Like, what the hell? And then they've become fans through the process of watching Supercross.
That's awesome.
And so they came to Anaheim too to check it out as well with us. We got a suite there, came along, had a look, and they're just like, this is incredible. But it's got so much scope for improvement. What can we do? Because they have that sport and entertainment, experience, and they're looking at it through fresh eyes. They're new fans, but they've got experience in all these other sport and entertainment properties, and how we can turn this into a global property. So that was what was exciting for us, because we're obviously hardcore fans like you, and we've been around it forever. So we believe in it. We've believed in it forever. But then when you've got these guys that are so experienced in all these other sport and entertainment properties, believing in your vision and going, we believe too. We were just like, this is serious. Like, we can really make this work. And getting their belief was just that kind of final, kick for us to go, like this, we can really do this,
Because it's such a massive project.
It's
fucking out of control. Like the journey that you're about to go on with it.
It's insane. And Matt came to San Diego with me. It was just Matt and I, because Adam had COVID, so he missed San Diego, and Matt got it within 5 minutes of being at San Diego. The younger crowd, the diverse crowd, there's a lot younger teenagers, under 35s than most sports, to be honest, and a lot of male, female, a lot of young teenagers, young 20-year-olds going in groups of friends. Then you got young families with kids. Like, he was blown away with the demographic of fan that was at San Diego, and it's exactly the same fan that we had at AUS-X Open. And
100%.
It certainly excites me the same, because I remember when we first went to Bercy, went to Paris, and we saw how they were putting that event on before we were doing AUS-X Open, and it blew me away of what was possible. And then, we feel we achieved that with AUS-X Open, but before we'd actually done it, to concept that and then for it to roll it out and see what it can do as an entertainment property, just as much as a, incredible sport that everyone respects worldwide, is really exciting. And to Adam's point, they were there, and in 5-10 minutes, okay, this is an incredible property. This is arguably a once in a lifetime opportunity, because it's a world championship, and certainly for an Australian company, no Australian companies had an FIA or FIM World Championship before. So that's really exciting, something we're proud of as well.
Yeah. I mean, it must feel weird a little bit for you guys, because you guys are living in the future, like so far ahead of, and then to even do like a podcast like this, or you do other interviews and stuff, like, it just seems so obscure at this point to people, but you guys are like actually living in the future, and you could see so much more than, I guess, what like the average kind of person could see, and it's almost like the messaging, or you guys have like this messaging challenge over like the next little bit of like, no, this is fucking real, like, you don't understand, like, you don't know what we know, kind of thing, with like this level of investment in the companies.
It's true. And respectfully, the AMA Supercross Championship is so huge, and as we've been fans forever, and we are fans of Supercross and of that championship. I've watched it since I was a kid, and as has Sando, so we're big fans of it. So it's not like we're out to shit can anything that anyone else has done. It's just that we truly believe that it can be an international global sport, and it isn't yet. And so we have a really clear vision of what that looks like, and we truly believe in it, and we see F1 and MotoGP, and we see those athletes looking up to Supercross athletes. I mean, like Jack, he's an incredible MotoGP athlete, and he's looking at Jet Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence like they're legends, and it's like it tells us that Supercross belongs at that level. It belongs at the pinnacle of global sport, and as great as the championship is now, and as great as it has been, it's not that yet, and there is huge scope to grow. So, that's what excites us, because we love it. We're not out to shit can anything else, but we believe that it can be a global sport, just like F1 or MotoGP can be.
Well, I mean, that's, for me personally, that was the thing that surprised me the most, I guess, with doing the podcast, is like once it started getting a little bit of momentum, it was just like the fucking people that are in your inbox.
Yeah.
And just frothing over these Supercross dudes. And I was just like, why does no one know this?
Exactly.
This isn't a part of our culture, and there's so many sports where these kind of like the crossovers and the camaraderie between different athletes is like such a big part of, I guess, just like the narrative in general. You go to UFC and it's like every time there's a UFC event, it's like ringside, you see different celebrities and you see these different people, and they're like showing the social media tweets, and as far as I guess like other sports showing that and embracing that and it being a part of the culture, that was just a huge thing that motocross and supercross has just like never really capitalized on.
Yeah, it's like Dan Ricciardo in the Drive to Survive with Hunter Lawrence this season, and the crossover and the respect they have, and what they did with Alpine Stars, and they did the
gear.
Hunter ran his livery, and that sort of crossover is great for any sport, let alone supercross. And I think fundamentally what we're excited about is it's a unique motorsport, even compared to MotoGP and Formula One. Like our director Tavo Hellman, he's come from Formula One, and he mentioned the other day, he's like, Supercross, you don't go to an event and sit in a grandstand and just watch one corner like you do when you go to a Formula One or MotoGP event. Yeah. You sit in a beautiful stadium in your comfortable seat and you can see the whole track. And Supercross is such an amazing sport because you can watch your rider all the way around and see where he's faster than everyone else. You don't need to ride a bike to know, oh shit, he's just jumped that jump through, he's done a quad or a triple instead of a double or whatever. And it's super engaging. It's like, just as engaging as watching freestyle motocross or really elite action sports like big air snowboarding. Like it's got that incredible appeal, fearlessness, aspiration. And then you can combine it with all the entertainment production elements have been very successful for the likes of Nitro Circus touring around the world. And then we can add music, we can bring in DJs, we can bring in live acts. That's really exciting of what you can do for a fan experience. And then, fans could go to an EPL soccer game or NFL, football game in the US and then go to Supercross the next week. Like that's pretty phenomenal. They could have the same fan experience technically in the stadium. Yeah. So it makes a very unique motorsport compared to what even some MotoGP and some Formula One events can offer. So that's where we see the excitement and the vision of the future for this sport.
And so when you start talking to these different, like this investment company, what are they like? What are their initial thoughts? Like, is it a super hard sell? I mean, like you kind of, once you got them to the stadium, they sort of got it, but is the sport a hard sell to outsiders? Because I think it's like, that's kind of been the stereotype within the industry, right? Is like there's no outside industry sponsors and, blah, 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 blah. And you see guys come in and then they go out. So I think there's a big part of the industry that's just jaded from that as well. But what was that and like initial process like? Does it just instantly grab these people's attention and it's just never been put to them? Or is it a tough sell?
Well, they invested that $300,000 on a research paper to see what fans there was of Supercross around the world, what regions, what cities, what governments would likely support events like this. And they invested a lot to research, and it came back with pretty surprising results at how many fans there are around the world. And I mean, the likes of Brazil popped up was quite a surprise. They don't have Supercross like this, but there's a huge amount of fans. It was ranked in the top 4 or 5 of cities of countries that have Supercross fans, along with US obviously being number 1, France, Australia, other parts of Europe where we underestimate that there are fans all around the world that don't get Supercross events. They don't, they've never seen it in person. Like we've been lucky enough to travel and see it in person and have our own events, and the AusX Open, people were really grateful that we were able to run events like that in their home country and we could bring it to them. But there's countries like that all around the world that haven't seen it or experienced it. So, I think the fundamentals of what makes Supercross amazing are really obvious in terms of, like Sando said, you can see the whole thing. You can be in a comfortable stadium. What they do is insane. You don't have to ride to see how impressive it is. The differences that riders are doing on the track are very visible compared to, Formula One, for example, where it's, hundredths of a second and visibly you can't see any different. The ability to combine it with sport, the live sport and entertainment, unlike anything else. When you're in a stadium, you can create a concert essentially and have motorsport in the same place, which is not common for other forms of motorsport. If you're in an outdoor, Formula One track or a MotoGP circuit, you can't do that. Entertainment is very hard to do outside the racing itself.
Yeah.
So being in a stadium environment, it also means you're bringing it to the people. You can be in a capital city, with millions of people at your doorstep, with Ubers and trains and public transport and restaurants and hotels and all the stuff that makes Supercross awesome is not just what happens inside the stadium. It's the whole experience around it, and it's super convenient. So for a weekend away or a time with your missus or your family or whatever, it's incredibly, like, your feet don't have to touch dirt, but to go to a motocross event or to go even a MotoGP event or a Formula One event, you got to trudge through a bit of a car park. You got to make a bit of a mission, and you can be out in the sun all day, or it's multiple days, and it's for the fan experience, you've got to be a hardcore to really be willing to do that. But in Supercross, you can swan on in 10 minutes before it starts, jump out of the Uber or out of a restaurant. You can jump in, fireworks go, the show's, awesome minute to minute, and you're fully engaged the whole time. Then you can leave and you can go to a bar or a club or a restaurant or a hotel or whatever it is really easily. Yeah. And so it just removes the barriers for fans, to get involved. And that's what's exciting about it, because that's what tells us is there's so much more scope, is because it's easy access. People can get there and they can experience it really quickly if we can deliver it to them, around the world. So we think, and I believe, to answer your question, they were engaged by that fact, wasn't it? How easily we could welcome people in when we can take a stadium event like that around the world. Yeah,
they were certainly blown away that we had exhibition events that were all profitable as well, with only 4 or 5 of the Americans, coming over. So they, with Tony's vision as well, and I think with regards to supercars, what he achieved, if you compared, say, a Winton event that would get maybe 50,000 over a few days to an Adelaide 500 that would get over 300,000 over 4 days, what was the big difference? A lot of it was built around music, entertainment, everything over and above the event. Yeah. So he built these large signature supercars events with massive touring acts, and we saw with even the Adelaide 500, it varied in 100,000 people just in 1 year when they had lower level music acts in the last year. They went from 320,000 attendees to 200, and then the government bailed out on the event, in their last year. So Tony's success in supercars was built around music and entertainment, and he grew that series over time, built fandom, built following that then, grows avid supporters. And then, I'm not saying everything is built on music and entertainment, but to get that growth, you need to bring something new to the sport to get them there to the events, for them to then fall in love with the drivers and fall in love with the sport itself. So I think, everything Adam said is exactly right. And then what we'd achieve with exhibition events, they were like, wow, if you had the World Championship, what's possible? Yeah. And obviously it's not just us, it's Tony, but it's the other directors and it's the team of people, to Adam's point, that we're building around us, and having the capital to go out and get the very best people to build an incredible team to do this. And that's really exciting now for us, because we are building that team, and people are jumping on board, and they're seeing the vision, and now it's up to us to obviously work as a team to execute. Yeah. And we got a short runway this year, there's no question, but we're in this for, as Adam said, 10 years, not 1 year. This is not just a fly in the pan. If it works, happy days. If it doesn't, we're out, like the AusX Open was. We're committing to 10 years. We're coming. This is happening. You're on board or not, or, jump on board later, but that's up to you. But this is definitely going on. So,
so I guess, does it factor into your mind at all that, you've got like this legitimate funding, and you're not going to sort of be at the mercy of, I guess, like the same, I don't know, like dipping from the same pockets, because it's just like Monster, Red Bull, like the sport for so long, the cash that's funded this shit has come from 3 companies essentially, and it's like there's only so much you can do. Like you're sort of operating within a certain ecosystem that's kind of bigger than just Supercross, you know. So it's like, from where I'm sitting now, it's like, okay, they've got this legitimate funding from a completely outside company that the interest is just the package, not necessarily like pushing their brand. Like they're not trying to sell anything other than like the sport and the package itself.
Yeah.
That to me is actually a big deal.
It's a massive deal, and it's massive for us to be able to talk to the industry and talk to teams and talk to manufacturers and say, hey, for the manufacturers in particular, we're not here to try and put another drain on you. You know, what we're here to do is, and we've got great support to build something with or without you. We want you, of course, we want all of the manufacturers involved. We want all of the, all the best riders in the world involved. But a lot of the times with these sports, and as you said in the industry, they go to the same people and ask them for money to try and make something happen. And to be able to have the support we've had and enables us to back ourselves and to say this is going to happen. So no single brand or no single manufacturer can put a halt on that, because we're not reliant on them. And then it's on us to build something world class like we plan to, for them to want to come involved, as opposed to like, we're going to them cap in hand and saying, hey, can you help throw us some cash so we can get this thing up? It's not that. It's us saying, we want you involved. We're going to build this global property. We'd love to have you there, but it's going to happen with or without you, which is a very different conversation, because then they want to be involved, because we're not there to drain them. We want to build something that's an international property that's of great benefit to the sport, to the teams, the riders, and everyone that's involved, as opposed to us being another drain on them. And that's really been the best thing about it.
And in Melbourne, like, to clarify, we only had 35% of the fans at the AUS-X Open Melbourne. 35,000 fans. 35% of them were endemic fans.
Yeah.
So 40% of everyone that was interviewed after the event that didn't ride or wasn't into motorcycling before, they said, I would actually be interested in getting into motorcycling. So we had 65% of people that were just entertainment audience, just, families, friends, young people going, I'll check this out and see what this is in Melbourne, the first time we'd obviously been there. And that's really exciting for us, because that means you've got an audience that can be captivated and turned into endemic fans, but you've also got 65% of an entertainment audience, young predominantly as well, that brands can't normally target and can't really attach themselves to anything or really advertise to. So if they align with these heroes, we know that young people now, and obviously a lot of millennials, Generation Z, they're more likely to buy off someone they look up to or is moving the needle, is aspirational. They're more loyal to people they think are cool, or their influencers or sporting stars. So the brands have a huge opportunity to attach themselves to these heroes, and we have a massive focus on growing the audience and the fan base. So we've got a massive job to do to grow globally the sport of Supercross and the appeal for then people, young kids, young teenagers, young 20-year-olds, to get into motocross at whatever age and do it as a hobby or then as a profession. But there's a huge opportunity to grow the audience as opposed to just tap into the same fan all the time.
Yeah, and I think, we as an industry have too much focused on motocross bike sales or Supercross and how it sells motocross bikes, but it's not necessarily that. There's a lot of motorcycles sold around the world, and it's that, we use the analogy all the time that Mercedes don't sell Formula One cars. They do Formula One because it showcases their brand at the highest level and how innovative they are, all those kinds of things. And so Supercross is that. It's the elite level. Not everyone is going to be a Supercross rider. In fact, such a tiny percentage ever will. But it doesn't mean you won't buy a motorcycle or a scooter or a farm bike or something and be influenced by watching your favourite Supercross rider. And that's kind of been the shift that we've had to make, because too often we sort of, it's spoken about like it's niche, but it's actually not, because it's an amazing entertainment spectacle, which isn't niche at all. Supercross and who's actually going to ride Supercross, that's niche. But as an entertainment spectacle, Supercross isn't niche at all, because anyone can enjoy it. we use this example all the time, but one of the first AusX Open events, we had the managing director of Coke there because Monster sponsored the event. He brought his wife along, who would have been in her mid-50s. At the end of the night, she came down onto the floor and she was just blown away. She said, "This was the best thing. I had the best time. Thank you so much." And we're like, you are not the audience that everyone says is niche to Supercross, but that just proved to us that Supercross isn't actually niche. Anyone can enjoy it. Whether you ride or not, that's a whole different thing. But there will be people that'll get into motocross and dirt biking and adventure riding and, other forms of motorcycle riding that aren't necessarily going to be a Supercross rider. Surfing is an example for us. Yeah. Love surfing. My biggest passion other than motocross. But I'm never going to be a pro surfer, and I'm not interested in surfing pipe. I have no interest in it. But I appreciate
still be
it.
A part of the culture and be a part of the vibe.
I love it. I'm like, this is sick. I'd love to go on surf trips like we've done a number of times. Absolutely froth it, but I'm not going to surf pipe, and I do not care for surfing pipe. And that shows that's the same thing with Supercross. People can come along, appreciate it, be entertained, have an epic time, but not actually want to do it or go buy a motocross bike to race Supercross. Yeah. But they may buy a Honda or a Yamaha or a KTM for something else on the basis of what they've seen there.
And interestingly, Julian Wilson went to one of our first AusX Opens and rides and is a real advocate for the sport. So that's a good crossover. So we took a lot of the first couple of years of AusX Open, our friends and family and everyone we knew that came, particularly the females or non-interested, Supercross fans at the start, how much then they wanted to come each year and how much they supported, how it converted them into following the sport. It really motivated us, obviously, in those early years to keep going, and why we thought we could get to Melbourne eventually and do like what we did with 35,000 fans, and why we think with the World Supercross it can do 50, 60, 70,000 fans. We think there's a huge opportunity for this sport to grow. And we take a lot of energy out of that in those early years because we did see that. We saw again that entertainment audience, and we've seen this with other properties. I mean, Nitro Circus is another great example. It only has freestyle motocross, BMX, and scooters. It doesn't have a formal racing competition or anything. So we always knew Supercross is bigger than that because it's a true competition.
You've got a sport
racing
within. It's not just
and you can combine
entertainment
with it. You can combine the best bits of Nitro Circus with it, but you've got a true, and in this case, a world championship, which is really exciting. And we've seen that in even Monster Jam as well as a great entertainment property and very successful. But again, it's not a true competition, but it does very well at appealing to young kids and family audiences. So why can't Supercross do that? Why can't we develop entertainment to appeal to those audiences as well, but then hook them into Supercross? Because that we all believe should be, and as Adam touched on earlier, we think it can be that MotoGP, Formula One level of sport. It's got the respect amongst its peers. The riders have huge respect globally. They have huge followings globally that also supports that. But they just haven't really had an opportunity like this to go truly global, in our opinion. And to have the opportunity like this and to fund the teams like we are is very unique. And it's not unique to different sports. It's very common to NASCAR charter system or even the NFL franchise system, supercars and the rec system that Tony created with supercars. We've just had a white sheet of paper with this opportunity, and we've taken all of the best bits we think from other sports, and then we've applied it. And now Adam's obviously the lead on that and finding 10 official franchises for the World Championship, which is hugely exciting. And also for those franchises, it's going to be very valuable for them. And that's, it's what's going to be keeping you busy all year, but it's really, really exciting of having a new approach to Supercross as well.
I think too, it's sort of worth mentioning for, I guess, if you're like a casual Supercross fan and you don't know the ins and outs of it, Supercross is owned by Feld by Feld, and then that is like Disney on Ice. It's Monster Jam, it's concerts, and there's like a pretty crazy kind of story within Feld, and it sort of makes sense of why Supercross doesn't have some of these things that you're talking about, because it sort of just doesn't make sense for that particular business model. And I think a lot of people, they look at Supercross and they don't know like the backdoor workings of it, and there's probably a little bit of frustration or a sense of like, oh, why doesn't this happen? Why doesn't this happen? But essentially, like, you've got this massive umbrella company that owns all of these other properties, and essentially it's just like it has events in these stadiums just like revolving, and it's really hard for anyone else to even get in a stadium with anything else because Feld has these deals, and like, so it's not, and to Feld there's no real, that you've got the AMA that works with them, so it's like the people that own the property, they don't oversee the racing, and they're not the same on the same page, and it's just like, it's a bit of a mess, to be honest. And I mean, if you look at like this year, I'm so sucked into F1 this year. Massive regulation change, huge regulation change, all new rules, crazy new developments. Like, there's so much to follow in that sport, just based on like them changing some rules and some dimensions of different things. And it's like, as a fan experience, like that sport is giving you so much. And it just seems like with Feld and then the AMA, that Feld doesn't really want to change. Like, it's just a small piece of their puzzle. So it's like, what's the incentive for them to just like year on year push and improve Supercross? It's really not. Like, it just needs to stay in line. And again, it's not talking shit or anything, but this is just like the reality of the business. It's like, that just has to keep doing its thing over there. If it loses a bit of money this year, that's fine. We just need to keep those dates for this stadium, and we need to keep this contract happy. And then on the AMA side, it's like, oh, we can't really do this because Feld's got this and the TV will do this. So I just think, like, even from the perspective of with you guys, like, it just seems like a lot more control, and there can be real changes made, and it can be done, like, you know. And I always go to the UFC when we're talking about this kind of stuff. It's like, you've got one fucking dude that is like the face of the company. He's the voice of the company. Doesn't give a fuck what people think. Will make it known what they want to do, why they're doing it. Always seems like there's a lot of transparency. And then again, it sucks you in as a fan because, like, there's constantly shit happening. There's constantly, like, you're a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Supercross, and I mean, Chase Sexton, when he came on the podcast, I'd never really kind of thought about it in direct terms as he said, but he said Supercross is more of a show than a sport. And I'm like, fuck, I'm over here thinking that I follow a sport. But I sort of don't.
Well, it's the ultimate combo of both. That's what we love about it, right?
But in terms of the way that it's packaged now with Feld, it's like, it's just the same show.
Yeah.
For 20 years, it's been the same show. It's like, and us on the inside, we think it's a sport. But in all reality, it's a 3-hour broadcast on whatever NBC. The format's the same. Everything's the same. The rules are the same. Everything's the same. We just have been watching the same soap opera for 20 years, you know, and like on the inside, we're thinking that we're a part of this crazy sport because we know all these inner workings, but sort of just not really what is going on, you know?
Yeah, I think that, you know, and that's what's so exciting for us is that we have a blank sheet of paper. Yeah. What are the things? How do we completely disrupt this industry and this sport and make it what we believe it can be, which is a global sport? You know, we literally started from scratch. What are we going to do? How do we do it? What are the things that we don't think work currently, and how do we improve on them? You know, and one of them, which to lead in from Sando's point before, is, you know, we don't think that so much of the show should be spent watching people qualify to be in the main part of the show.
Amen.
At an elite level, at a world championship level. Like, granted, at grassroots, you need to have that, of course. And you know, you want to have the privateers coming through and you want everyone to have an opportunity. But when you're talking the Formula One of dirt bike racing, then, you know, it's the best. It's all about the best. We can't buy a car and have a crack at qualifying at a Formula One event, nor can we do that in a MotoGP event, nor can we do that at a NASCAR event or an IndyCar event. But in Supercross, you can. Now, that's all good at a national level, but at a world championship level, we think it should be all about the heroes, and it should be about the big names, and the show should be, and the event should be focused around them because people want to see the best in the world, and every minute should be dedicated to showcasing them in the best possible light, you know. So so we went about, how do we do that, you know, and that is where we've come to the you know, we're not going to have qualifying heats through the night. There will be qualifying procedures, of course, but in terms of who makes it to the main and that kind of thing isn't part of it. We've got 10 teams. They've got to have the best possible riders. They've got 2 250s and 2 450s on each team. Yep. Makes up 20 in each class. There'll be 2 wildcards in each class for every event, so we can get local stars to.
So me and Sam can race.
You can try, 100%.
Qualify, to Adam's point. You can qualify to make it for the night, but then you are...
choice.
Yeah.
Then you're in. So, you know, to Adam's point, like, you're not you're not, I guess, changing the structure on the main night or the main broadcast that goes global.
Yeah.
You know, there'll be support categories and there's ways in which to qualify, and there'll be national championships racing at the events. But for the main 2-3 hour broadcast, it's just the world's best going head to head. And we're really excited about changing the formats. We did that with AUS-X Open, and we're going to do that with the FIM World Championship as well. So that's really exciting. And I think with regards to Feld too, we've spoken with Dave Prater and we've spoken with Feld, and we've said in the media that that championship will run January to May every year. And our World Championship will run probably as early as late June or early July through to November. So we'll respect and for the riders that want to do Supercross only, they'll have a break in between both championships and they'll be able to do Supercross only, and we can celebrate and grow Supercross as a sport around the world and celebrate the Feld Championship just as much as we can celebrate ours and the growth globally. So that's really exciting for Supercross fans as well.
So I guess what that's probably like I guess the question that a lot of people have had is like, all right, how do you guys see this just like fitting into the current ecosystem? You know, the US has a massive stranglehold on like quote unquote like the best riders, especially in Supercross. You got 17 races, which everyone thinks is too long. Like I've never spoke to a rider, an industry person, at like anyone that's like, fuck yeah, we definitely should do 17 races. Like, and then for outdoors, same thing. You've got 12, so it's like 29 weekends of the year. The best dudes in the world are already taken. So what does that leave you guys with? You know, like there's not a lot of weekends left. So I guess how does that whole thing kind of sit in your mind, and how do we move to like your series being like the, because essentially it's like the goal for you guys would be, this is the biggest series in the world. Like this is the one that everyone wants to win. It's not that right now. It's the AMA Supercross. So like what's the roadmap to it becoming that?
Well, I think first and foremost this year we purposely kept it really tight to race outside the American Championships, so September to November, because we realise there's teams and riders with contracts in place and then nothing can change, and we wanted to respect that and give the best opportunity for those guys to be involved outside the current schedule. You know, doing 34 races in a year is not ideal, and you sure couldn't stretch it more than that for some of those guys. So hence why, you know, we believe what we're presenting is an opportunity for people to be Supercross specialists with the teams and the riders. So they'll do the AMA Supercross or other domestic championships around the world, and then do the World Championship following that. And it won't be for everyone. Some will want to go race AMA motocross or other motocross championships. But like MXGP has done for motocross, it's created specialists in motocross, and the best in the world at motocross, as it sits today, are the guys that do the MXGP championship, because they're just all about motocross all year long. And we believe that we'll do the same with Supercross, that those riders will be the best in the world at Supercross, because that becomes their number one focus. And we believe there'll be teams and brands and etc. that will see the value in that. So for some there'll be a choice, but again, we are inviting riders from all around the world, not just America and not just the American Championship. It's important for us that we have a global spread.
Yeah, and maybe touch on that, Baze, because, you know, from a team's perspective, it's very interesting, but Adam's had over 30 applications from teams all over the world wanting to be part of the 10 franchises. So Adam's going to be saying no to more teams than he's going to be saying yes. And ultimately they'll be responsible for the riders, and they'll be selected on the riders that they are going to have in their team. So that's a big decision for Adam to lead over the coming months. But I mean, you've been overwhelmed, haven't you, by the interest and how global it's been, you know, where they've come from.
Yeah. And it's amazing because you find out that there is Supercross fans and teams and riders around the world that really want to do this, but it's kind of, I don't want to say it's unfair, but it's very difficult if someone has to move to one country, a different country, to try and succeed at that sport, which is what, you know, the Lawrence boys have been able to do it, and so have some French riders, but it's very difficult. They have to move to the US and move their whole life there and adapt everything to the American way of life in order to succeed at Supercross. But if we can create a truly global championship, that shouldn't be the case, because there should be teams and riders out of Sweden that have got their own practice facilities and tracks, etc., and they're building up. There should be the same in Japan, the same in Indonesia perhaps, or Brazil or Argentina, or, you know, because there's a championship that goes around the world, they don't have to go to the one country and somehow try and, you know, beat all the local guys, which is hard enough as it is, and then work their way up to even get the support of access to a practice track or the access to the bikes, etc.
Yeah.
You know, that's a very, very difficult challenge, especially when it's a different culture. You got to move away from home. All those things, we feel like we can give an opportunity for there to be global talent because they can be in their home country, in their own comfort zone, and prep for World Supercross Championship, you know, and then it should level the playing field somewhat as well.
Plus, commercially, they can sell to sponsors racing at the home event in front of a home crowd. Like, that's the other part of that. It's very hard commercially to go into a different country and then take, you know, how do you take sponsors if you're only racing in the US, for example? So commercially, it's hard. And that's fundamentally what's going to happen with the World Championship is they're going to be able to commercialise themselves globally based on going to countries all over the world and tapping into budgets for international
Global
countries
brands,
all over the world. So you could tap into multiple budgets in multiple countries and do different activations and do different experiences for those brands in different markets, which they can afford to pay 3, 4, 5 times the value for. So it's a big deal for them commercially and for those teams as well, like to Adam's point, to go there without any commercial value. Whereas if you're a Japanese rider and you can represent Japanese companies in your home event and then they can partner with you around the world for the rest of the year and you're broadcast on a Japanese TV broadcaster and you're racing in the World Championship, that's a lot easier for you to justify. And we think that's going to motivate a lot of riders that do motocross in other championships around the world to look at this differently. And certainly from the team's perspective, they are looking at it differently because we're changing the model of the financial model and support for the teams, not just for Supercross, but for motocross globally. So it's a really different model for this sport. It's not a different model for a lot of other motorsports, but it certainly is for Supercross.
Yeah, one of the most unique things about Supercross, which it seems ridiculous really when you think about it, is at the elite level they pay to be in the show, and that is not the case in Formula One, that is not the case in MotoGP, and they're the stars of the show paying to be in the show, as opposed to being paid to be in the show, that's the number one thing that we're flipping. We're saying we will pay you to be there, we'll support you to be there, we need you to be financially successful and to be commercially viable, because that filters down to the riders, to the industry, to everyone else. And to your point before about, you know, previously we're tapping into the same pool of money. Not only is it the same number, you know, select few brands, it's a select few brands within one country's budget as well. Yeah. So you're going to, it's Honda America, Kawasaki America, Yamaha America, KTM America, paying for everything. You know, but when you take something globally, now you open the door to all these markets and all these other regions, and the reason why MotoGP athletes and Formula One athletes get paid so much more is they're global athletes getting paid as a contribution from all the countries around the world. You know, Monster has a global marketing fund that all countries contribute to, and that helps pay Valentino Rossi. You know, it's not just one country saying, "Oh shit, I got to fork out $20 million to get Valentino this year," or whatever it was. You know 100%. What I mean? Like, and that's why we believe that it'll change the game for the riders as well. Because while Supercross, again, is big in the US compared to what it is around the world, it's still tiny and it hasn't anywhere near hit its straps in its potential. I mean, that, you know, the top guys, if they're on a $2 million salary or something along those lines, I mean, man, in NFL, what is the guy even tying people's boots up getting paid that little? Like, they're underpaid for what they are. What they do, they're so underrated and so underpaid, in our opinion, and I think you would agree, and all the fans would agree. And the only way for them to get paid what they deserve is for them to be global athletes. And so that's what we want to do. We've got to show them to the world, and we got to the rest of the world will see these guys the way we all do and be like, they're insane. This is incredible. This is the best thing I've ever seen. And global brands will take interest, and budgets will come from different regions, and we feel like that'll perpetuate so that ultimately everyone benefits.
And we need international rider and international team, you know, participation. Like we've seen Jack Miller and Casey Stoner, when they're racing MotoGP at Phillip Island, the crowd is much bigger than when they're not racing, and particularly if they're doing well. Same with Dan Ricciardo,
Danny Rick at
Formula One. Same with when Mark Webber was going well. If we didn't have Australians going and competing well in those events, we wouldn't have the same crowds as when they are and when they do. And that's the same for every country around the world and every region around the world. And even to be motivated as a young up-and-coming motocross rider, if you've got this World Supercross Championship coming into the capital city where you live in an incredible stadium, packing out to 50,000 people, you're going to be training your ass off to get there eventually and qualify and get local brands and local sponsors and support you. And all of a sudden, your outlook on that sport changes drastically, doesn't it? When you see
there's something aspirational.
Yeah,
like
you look up to your hero. Everyone's been motivated generally by that national hero for them in a lot of cases. Some you're looking up to an international hero, but a lot of them it's who was the most successful Australian in that respective sport on a global stage. And generally that's your hero. Like we all have an attachment with Dan Ricciardo more than other Formula One drivers because he's Australian. And I think that's a big thing with this opportunity as well. And Adam's been very clear in all of his interviews that we're not looking to just take all the American riders and take them over here into the World Supercross Championship. We have to, like MotoGP has and like Formula One has, very successfully support young, up-and-coming riders from all over the world. We have to, or the global audience won't change.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think, MotoGP and Formula One is a perfect example in that sense. And they support, and there's no doubt that Dorna were very supportive of Jack getting to where he is because we needed him. Because as soon as Casey retired, the sales for tickets in Australia and viewership dropped through the floor because we didn't have anyone. And I know I lost interest when Casey's not racing. I'm like, what? I've got no reason to watch now. But and then now with Jack up there, then you do have a reason to watch. So we need that all around the world, to make a global championship. You need that, and we're going to go to race in Brazil, in time, and it's going to take time. We need Brazilians battling to win the races, and the same if we go into Asia, and the same, we need to support that. And it's not an overnight thing, right? Like there's a reason why the Americans are so good at it. They grow up doing this stuff. So, but it's a long-term plan to support the growth of Supercross, around the world by providing access to practice tracks and, supporting them to come out and do the Australian Supercross Championship, for example, to get some experience. And it's a long-term plan. It's not an overnight thing. Right now, of course, the Americans and the riders doing that championship are the best at it. But over time, we've got to change that to make sure that it's got a global spread.
And the best thing about Supercross is still that everyone lines up in that one gate. You're all got an equal chance at that first corner, and we saw it with AusX Opens. The Aussies, they'd lead laps, and everyone's losing their mind, and you're hoping that they're going to win the race. And the Americans might chase them down. I think Jason Anderson crushed a few souls over the years when he chased them down from last.
We love Jason, but we were secretly stoked when he stacked in the first turn. We had to work for it.
That's the beauty of Supercross. Like if you qualify and you're a wild card and you line up on that start line, technically you could lead the very first lap, and who knows what happens after that. But that's all the fans need. They just need hope, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think further to that, the reason we believe in it so much is because the best Supercross riders in the world are the best because of their riding ability.
Not because of the cars or
unlike other motorsports like Supercross, it just doesn't matter that much. Like it's 20% and the rider's 80%. That's the stat that goes around, which can be flipped in other forms of motorsport. So so truthfully, the guys that are winning, they didn't get there for money. They didn't get there from money, or so they're very aspirational and also, relatable to everyday people because they grew up just like us. They grew up riding dirt bikes like us, and they've got to that level, whereas you can't really say that about many Formula One drivers. It's like, he grew up in a similar upbringing than me. It's like Lance Stroll did not grow up in a similar upbringing as me. I'm sorry. He did not.
Very different.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you can't do that in Supercross. It doesn't matter how wealthy the guy is or whatever. You can't just buy the drive or a ride for your kid because you want it. Like, it doesn't work. No. The talent will always win. You could put any of the best riders on anyone else's bike in that field, and the result will probably be the same or pretty close to it. So
100%.
Plus,
means
the
so
injuries
relatable.
that they go through as well. Like, there's virtually no athlete that hasn't had a bad injury in Supercross. So the resilience and the hardships, there's so much story in that as well of what they go through to make it to that elite level. And it's so well respected because it is so brutal and it is so dangerous. And you make one little mistake and you could not only, lose the whole championship because of injury, but you could break your back, or you could break your neck, or you could break your arm. Like, it's a very, very highly dangerous sport. And that's what MotoGP riders respect, because they're generally injuring themselves in the off-season riding motocross. Yeah. And Formula One drivers are going, you guys are crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
I ain't doing that.
I own the mountain bike, so I don't ride motorcycle, but even that enough is to respect, holy shit, you know what I mean? I think, like, for fans, maybe you don't get into motocross, but you're still into mountain biking, for example, for a non-endemic fan. And that's still enough to respect these athletes. We want to celebrate like that lifestyle, the outdoor lifestyle, action sports, snowboarding, that surfing. It's all part of what we hope the fan base is. It's not just the rusted on Supercross fan. It's everything like that, outdoor lifestyle, action sports, and mountain biking. But even we want to attract kids to get onto little strider bikes and little e-bikes before they get to the motorcycle or the electric motorcycle. That's all part of our strategy as well, because the more, just like you say, on handlebars, on bikes, the better for the appeal of the sport. And you just ride a bike and then you watch them on a motorcycle. You don't need to have ridden a motorcycle to go, that guy is gnarly.
And to I guess squash the niche sort of comments on Supercross. I mean, all of us, not even just us, but I don't know of a kid, even my daughter who's 2, gets on a bike and makes ning noises and rides around. You know what I mean? There's always that connection, and that connection is what we need to draw to this. Again, whether they're going to be Supercross riders or motocross riders or not. Yeah. As a kid, there's always that connection with handlebars and bikes and things and engines, so we're just trying to maximize that and make sure that that's how we hook people in nice and early, to Sando's point.
Is part of the plan flying jet around to all these different countries and hooking up with like some chick that's got a brother that races or something, and just having like a bunch of Jet Lawrence kids just to try and like really diversify like the talent pool? Like, maybe we get a couple of top guys undercover flying around the world and start a little bit of a stud farm.
That's a great idea, actually. Maybe that's a bit of a business thing. Are we saying we're going to ask Jet to be a sperm donor? I don't know. Are we allowed to say things like that? I'm not sure. He's too young for that.
No, he's not.
I'm sure Lucas will be trying that at this point in time, actually, to try and see if he can get another 10 of them.
Yeah, we just get like, why is Jet in Brazil? Why is Jet in Japan?
Yeah.
Lucas has probably done that and put it in a freezer for the future.
Yeah. He's selling it now. He's selling it. They're selling for $2.4 million each, actually, as we speak. But no, Jet is amazing, but we need all different types of personalities and riders. That's why we love Jason, because he's his own type of guy. He's very unique. So is Dino Wilson. He's funny character. You need all these different diverse personalities, and Supercross brings that out because they do come from such diverse backgrounds. Again, money's not a thing, to get to be an elite Supercross rider. So there's all these different personalities and all these upbringings, all these hardships. Talk about the success of Drive to Survive in Formula One. Can you imagine if we really told the Supercross stories, which we will, which Sando will head up? We'll tell stories about Supercross that people do not realise. The mainstream world will be absolutely hooked when they know what these guys go through to get to where they are and what they do and what they put in and the risks they take day to day to day, how hard they work. People don't know that yet. They do not know that yet. And the amazing lifestyles they have, people don't, it's just completely, it's like an untapped story that people are not aware of yet. And once we, which Sando will lead, like I said, we'll tell them that, they can be absolutely blown away with thinking what these guys do.
And that's obviously anyone that knows the AME brand and what you guys did with Supercars and Supercars Life. Like, this has always been something that you guys have been pretty passionate about doing. That's obviously a big part of the strategy, is like a Netflix Drive to Survive type of thing. And there's some wheels in motion with that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and as Adam touched on, so it'll be announced really soon who we've acquired for our head of TV and media and broadcast. Is a huge acquisition for us, and it's going to lead globally, all of these TV innovations, like broadcast innovations, as well as then we're going to run a Drive to Survive series for Supercross every year. And it's a huge focus, as you say. We're very passionate about it. It's been hugely successful, even from NFL days with Hard Knocks. I mean, that was one of the first series we looked up to when we created V8 Live, and it hasn't died yet. I've watched the last, I think, 3 seasons. I love it. I'm a huge NFL fan from that series myself as well. And
have you watched Last Chance U as well?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, boys. Get
Really?
on, honestly,
Yeah, right.
get on Last Chance U. The first couple seasons of that are just some of the most incredible, it's like sporting television you can watch.
Yeah,
Where do you watch that?
I'm pretty sure that's on Netflix as well.
Yeah, sick.
Well, these sort of documentaries generally are hugely popular because people want to correlate their lives to
Relatability,
the sporting star's life. And to Adam's point, these guys are elite.
Yeah.
Like when we go over there and see how much they train arguably as hard as any athlete in the world. And no one really realizes that, how much they're riding through the week, how hard they're training. I mean, they're so elite, and that needs to be covered. But also the lifestyle. You know, they've all got smoking hot girlfriends or wives. You know, everyone knows that they're elite, but it just hasn't been sort of broadcast well enough. You know what I mean? Like everyone respects that, and that's why we keep drawing on the MotoGP Formula 1 comparisons, because they all realise what these guys are.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't had the support and the platform for them to be the global megastars they deserve to be. So Drive to Survive for me, I'm watching season 4, nearly finished it, and it's getting better every year. And I think, you know, obviously the production quality is incredible, but there's no reason we can't align with a Netflix or an Amazon and do something of the same level. Maybe not to that level, obviously, Formula 1. But
how's the budget going for that too?
Good luck.
It doesn't need to
no,
be
the
either,
stories
you know?
need to be told, right? And
exactly.
and what's critical for that series is the access. And what's amazing about that is the first season started and Ferrari and Mercedes weren't in it. No access. Now, season 4, we all saw those final races last year, and they're right in their meetings with Lewis Hamilton engineers. They're with Christian Horner paying out Toto, like just speaking openly, swearing, calling him whatever he wants, and they're putting it live. So there isn't an other sport in the world that can now riders or athletes can say, hey, no, sorry, you can't come in here. That's not happening in F1, and it's certainly not happening in Supercross now moving forward. You know, the game's changing, and this is proving how successful it is globally, because Formula 1 ratings are going through the roof. And like you said, a lot of it's attributed to the changes they're making and cost cutting. They're making it way more competitive for all the teams. And they're changing the car for the first time, and it's sort of neutralizing the field. Lewis Hamilton doesn't have this dominance that he once had. And the personalities, they're dragging it out, but also the team owners are hating on each other, and people are getting behind, you know, even like Gunther in Haas, he's super popular and they're the worst team in the sport. But people like that. They want to see underdog. Now this year they just got, you know, I think it was 2 top 10s or very close to. I think Mick Schumacher got 11th. They're going to be a hugely popular team really quickly if they have some success this season. And that's what it's all about. And it's
because they have context. And I think that's why I think people enjoy this podcast, is because there's these riders that you talk to and like you see them on TV all the time, and you see like the web clips and you see their Instagram or whatever, but like to really get context, like to really understand, like, oh, this is how that person thinks, this is how that person talks. Like, you don't need to get results, quote unquote. Like, you don't need to win every race. Like, one guy wins every race. There's 22 on the line. So it's like, what, do we hate 21 dudes because they don't win? Yeah. It's like, you can still fully froth on the dude that got 10th if you have context to his story.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, I get it, man. Like, I know why he's not winning, but that's fine. Like, I understand, like, that dude's a legend. Like, this is what he's been through, you know? So I think that it's a strategy as well when it comes to, like, telling those stories. And I think this has been, like, one of my gripes with the sport is, like, if you're not standing on a fucking podium, you're worthless to this sport. And I just think that's ridiculous.
It is.
Like, there has to be a way to make getting 10th like fucking gnarly.
And context is exactly how you do it too. You got to tell the stories, because there's a reason why, you know, the guy winning is winning and the guy coming 10th is coming 10th, and that 10th may mean just as much to him as it did to the guy that won, because he's been through all this hardship that you don't realize and people don't know. And so there's so many stories that are untold. Like, it's honestly endless, and the sport is so incredible. The fact that they ride 3 days a week or more and then race, like, they're doing what they like. Formula 1 can't do that. MotoGP doesn't do that. Like, these guys are taking those chances on the reg like almost daily. Like, that's incredible that they would do that and have to be they have to be centimetre or inch perfect every day to avoid serious injury. And then they've got to do all their other training. They've got to do sponsor commitments. They're traveling around. They've got to, you know, manage life in general. It's pretty incredible. And throw that in with, you know, personalities from around the world, and the
rivalries,
teams.
the fact that these guys have like raced each other since they were kids. Dude, Ando on the podcast yesterday said, he's like, dude, I'm in the business of just like lying to myself. He's like, I lie to myself on the track that I'm not scared. I lie that I'm not tired. I lie that I'm not going to crash through these whoops. It's like, how many other sports do you know where like the best dude in the world is like going around the track purely based on just like lying to himself? Because that's how fucking gnarly the level of competition is. And like, we were in that particular point, we were talking about the whoops at A3, where it's just like that 150-yard section of track is like there's 2 dudes in the world that could do it. And then one of those dudes did it a little bit better than the other, and that's why he won the race. And it was just fully down to a game of commitment of like, who's gonna fucking send it for the longest through this particular set of whoops,
and take the biggest chances you can take in life without going over the line.
Crazy fucking chances, and it's like no one talked about it.
I find
it's not a big deal at all.
I find
no
that
one cares.
the most insane part, because they're practicing week in, week out. They're doing it millions of laps, and still they get to the track, and that catches them out in practice or even in the race. Like we've seen, there's like no one could get through those whoops properly. That's insane to me. It just does not happen in any other sport. Anyone else that's doing it day in, day out, they've got it just absolutely dialed. So how hard is this? Because they can't. They're the world's best and they can't. So it's so physically impossible. And they're bordering on achieving the impossible virtually by doing that at the speed that they're doing.
And the consequences are just so high.
Yeah.
When you're growing up, in motocross or supercross and you're a hardcore fan, and then you're seeing, front cover news that an AFL guy broke his wrist or his arm or whatever, you're like, man, that happened 3 times at the club day yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, it's completely underappreciated. Like this, how brave these guys are, and then they can come back. I mean, like Ken Roxon, what he's been through, and you come back, and it's just crazy. Like, and then he's got to, in his own mind, sit there and beat the best in the world, remembering that he damn near lost his arm and all these other horrific injuries. So that those kinds of injuries burn into your brain. It's not something that that you can just forget about. You don't have those horrific injuries and just forget about it. They've got to overcome that every time they get on the bike. It lives with them. It's like sitting on your shoulder if you've had those kinds of things forever. It doesn't go away, but the best can deal with it somehow, and able to race at that level and completely put that to the side and race at this incredible speed, taking these incredible chances time after time after time. It's actually unbelievable.
And such high stakes at all times, because not even if the injury is parked to one side, it's the fact that then if you're out, you don't get the results, so then injury you might get dropped, or you don't race in the next team, or your career's over. I mean, look at Austin Faulkner again. I mean, that crash was just devastating, because he's so conscious, and he was racing this year to try and make it through the season, and he was so open about that, taking second, being and then it's completely out of his control. And then it impacts him, and it could impact his career,
his life.
It's money, it's career, it's the next contract signing, like all that stuff. It's so incredibly cutthroat, and just no one really knows the full story, really, which is why that's it's so important for us to do that. That's why we just have to do that. We have to tell that story properly, year in, year out, to make sure people, and then obviously fans around the world, get involved and get on board that journey, because they get to understand them and get to understand what they go through. And how can you not be incredibly impressed and blown away when you really know all of that, like we do? But there's millions of people that don't know that.
It's really interesting too with Tom Potter, one of our founding directors. So he's had 25 years in Formula One. He's sold a lot of sponsorship, Formula E, IndyCar, and we were going through in the US all the Formula E drivers and all their social followings, and comparing them to all the AMA Supercross and all of the followings of all the riders. And even like Hunter and Jet Lawrence as an example, their followings now, not only are they larger than Formula E drivers, but they're larger than almost every AFL player, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. There's no AFL player that's got over 1 million followers. Like Jet Lawrence has probably arguably got more following than any AFL player, but then he's certainly got more following than any Formula E driver, and that is an established world championship. So the fans already know Like, that's what's so exciting about social media, to your point at the start. If we didn't have social media and it was just a TV broadcast, you wouldn't know anything about a Dean Wilson, for example.
Yeah.
You know, who's such a popular rider, he's one of the most popular.
And these guys have built that
events.
following on their own.
Yeah,
basically.
they've broadcast their personality.
Yeah.
They've, you know, he talks through. He's still human. He talks about how he has anxiety and issues, but then he's got, you know, beautiful wife, and he's got a fantastic lifestyle, and he's got an incredible personality. Every time he ever came out to Ausex Open, we always did this fucking funny video, and he was always, you know, putting a twist to it. Everyone loved him coming out, you know. So I think social media's been a great thing for that, but these series like the Drive to Survive, they're also telling those stories, and we need to do that to grow the following of the sport as well.
Well, I mean, dude, like Danny Rick, obviously massive star already. Drive to Survive comes out, and even I remember he got to he went back to America for the first time after Drive to Survive come out, and he just was like, dude, crazy, like mobbed. Just can't walk out of your front door, crazy. He was already a superstar. So that's the level at which these kind of
content can affect
can actually create. And like Jacob, the producer in America, his girlfriend, his wife was just like, oh my god, Ricard, like freaking. And he's like, dude, she's never freaked out over like anyone ever, like zero interest in motorsport at all. And then as soon as Drive to Survive comes out, it's just like full Daniel Ricciardo. It's like
just relatable and understandable. And that's why, like, you know, Kelly, my wife, loves it too, because it's easy to watch. It's not watching long races. You're watching stories, and you're watching drama, and you're watching all that stuff. I mean, that's why we you know, created V8 Life, the TV series we did around Supercars so many years ago, is because at that time everyone was getting into reality TV, and they're watching people like, oh no, I hope I don't burn this you know, Pavlova or something like that, and we're like, what the fuck? Like, imagine that's like watching real like actual
shit,
stuff, like athletes like risking their lives and going after, you know, serious things and contract issues and blah blah blah, all that, stories about their life. And you know, we believe in that stuff so much, and we just believe Supercross has such an incredible story to tell. You know, that
we literally presented that to Seven Network and the brands back then in 2014, because we funded it with sponsors back then to fund this original series. But we literally presented most popular TV series are either reality TV or live sport.
So let's just do the both.
Why don't we combine both? You know, how will it go? But that's so true, and I think it's going to grow more and more. I mean, PGA Tour Golf's trying to do it. I don't think, like, I love golf, but I don't think that'll ever have as much success as Supercross could have, because they don't have the true hardships. It's not as relatable. You know, those golfers, you know, you're good at golf and you live the dream, you make a fuckload of money, and you don't have to be fit, and you never have an injury. It's totally different to Adam's, you know, about the upbringing, where you come from and how you make it in Supercross. They're different stars. So it's way more relatable as Supercross athlete. It's way more aspirational, because they're elite and they train their ass off. You can't watch someone that just, you know, like a John Daly, for example, that can just smoke and drink heaps of beer.
Like, I respect that, but
and he'll always kick your ass at golf. So it doesn't matter what you do, you know. So I don't think that sport's going to work the same. But everyone's now talking about and wanting to do this for obvious reasons.
There was a segment. I'm a massive golf fan, and used to just watch tournaments like all the way through. Like, I'd have the whole thing, and you can't. It's like a test match. Like, after a few days, like, it kind of boils down a few holes. It gets good, but you have to watch all of it for it to be good. But there was one time, there was like they were talking about one of the players who was fighting out for this particular win. The big deal story was the fact that he ships a mattress everywhere. I was like, fuck, this is a hard sell.
This is deep. Yeah, they're really going deep for the storylines to try and dig those out. I think we'll have. I think we'll be a
little bit easier.
Yeah, I think we'll find it a bit easier to find stories for us.
So, in terms of the financial side of things with the teams, so you explain the whole concept of having 10 teams. And helping them with finance, and like explain that ecosystem and how it's different to the model that we currently have.
Yeah, I think the main thing, you know, at the very start and the core of it is that, you know, we want to treat them like the stars of the show, which means they need to be supported to get there. And we want them to be commercially successful businesses, the teams to be successful businesses, because the way it works currently is unless they're funded from a factory, that's willing to sort of tip in an unlimited amount kind of thing to whatever it takes to win, you know, the other teams don't really have a fair shot at it. So to again, make that more competitive and make sure these businesses, as the teams, can actually survive. We wanted to support them through that. So essentially, what we've offered is a signing fee for the teams that are selected to come on board, and that's to help them, particularly this year when there's a changeover from being a US or a European or whatever regionally based team it is, and their sponsorship comes from that region. We're giving them that money to help them, until they can achieve international sponsorships for a starter, so to help them get set up. And then there's an appearance fee per event. So each team is paid to as long as they show up with their 4 riders and compete, they get paid their appearance fee. There's freight, so we pay for the freight of their bikes around. So it's more of a MotoGP style flyaway model, So again, from an infrastructure investment, it's a lot cheaper than traditional, in a sense. We don't expect them to have semi-trailer trucks or big awnings. We'll create the infrastructure at each event so that they can literally fly in with their boxes of bikes and equipment, and that's what they need. And then there's the prize money is paid to the teams, which is a big part of it. So there's a $250K prize pool per event, which is quite significant. It goes to the team. So it's up to each individual team to hand that straight to each rider, or they may negotiate a 50-50 share, or however that works. We just wanted to put that in their hands again, so that the team is kind of at the center of it, because we need to build brands in the teams for longevity, because as riders come and go, they get injured, but we want, like what Ferrari has in Formula One, or McLaren has in Formula One, Red Bull has in Formula One, where they have their own passionate fans, and then the riders can come in and go, but the fans remain with the team. So that's a big part of it. But also, that is another reason why we wanted to remove the qualifying to race component, because those teams can go get commitments from sponsors that they're going to be in the show. They're going to be
on the start line, yeah.
They're going to be there. They're 100% in. They're going to be there. And it also means that we can make sure that there's a good share of voice for them and their sponsors, and help ensure that they're getting the right exposure, to justify sponsorships from around the world too. So essentially what that we feel like that will do is it means that each of these teams are creating a unique license. It means, there's scarcity. So at the moment, like we said at the start, you can buy a bike essentially and try and qualify for A1 and have a crack at it for the year. Which
me and Sam will probably do at some point.
Which we hope so, because that'll make for good content. And that's great, but in a world championship, absolute elite level, we think that there needs to be scarcity.
It's not necessary, yeah.
Well, just like there is in Formula One or MotoGP, to build value in those teams, there's got to be a level of exclusivity to be the world championship competing team, So that is something that we wanted to do. So, and it's following from what's been successful in Formula One, MotoGP, in NASCAR with the charter system they have for V8 supercars. I mean, the NASCAR system is a great example of, in the recent years, where Michael Jordan bought into a team just recently for, was it $13 million? And that team was voted, was $3 million 3 years before. So because he wanted in, there was no other way to get in, he had to buy that license. And so the scarcity creates value. So we believe that for the 10 teams that are in from the start, then they'll have something worth something in a few years. And if we do our job properly, which we obviously plan to do, and build a global championship, then in 3 years' time, those teams, those 10 licenses should be worth good money.
And in totality, the commitment financially is $50 million in the first 5 years. When you total the appearance fees, the signing fees, and all the freight logistics costs that we're going to take on to travel around the world, it's $50 million US. So it's a huge commitment over the next 5 years, and it doesn't include prize money. And prize money will be $250,000 US every round, and it will likely grow. And there'll be other revenue dividends to them as well that we're obviously putting in the Supercross teams entitlements agreements. So there's other ways to earn. So like the NASCAR charter system, they have 36 charters. We only have 10. So to Adam's point, like we're seeing the values of that scarcity in the charter system go up by 3 or 4 times. So we expect this scarcity and these teams in value, because we're going to take up so much of their costs with freight and logistics, and all they need to do is then fly their bikes, riders and personnel there. And because bikes and Supercross racing isn't that expensive when you compare to other motorsports, we feel these franchises could be very lucrative in 3 to 5 years' time. They could be at a multiple of 10 times as opposed to 3. So it's a really unique opportunity, and that's why we're seeing so much interest. And it's, again, Adam's job to select those 10 teams, present to the board for final sign-off. And he's got a really tough job on his hands because he's saying no to more people than he's saying yes. But it's really exciting to have this clean sheet of paper and this new approach. And, Tony did it very successfully in supercars, and he set up that model similarly in supercars. And when it started at 55,000, they're getting virtually no dividend, right? But when he sells it for 310 million, and the growth over those 20 years, those individual wrecks, there was 26 of them, they made over $20 million over those years, and they were worth, $3-4 million on the point of sales. And then scarcity as well was there. So it's interesting. It's not unique to all other sports, but it's certainly unique to this. And to Adam's point, to support that, we want team owners that are going to have international flavour. They're going to be personalities in their own right as well, and they're going to have their own brand.
Which I think is awesome.
And as Adam touched on, he said Mercedes, and he said Ferrari, and then he said Red Bull. So we want to be open to that as well. We're not just going to be focused on manufacturers or just wealthy team owners. We want brands to look at this, and we do want similar to a Red Bull Racing. We want brands to have a franchise and bring in riders and do things differently and really shake the tree. So that's exciting as well. And we've got a lot of interest from people from different sports and different backgrounds, and we're open to. Of course, you're going to say no to Michael Jordan having a team. I wouldn't think so, but we're open to those celebrity team owner approaches. So that's pretty exciting in itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But to Sando's point, $50 million US plus prize money over 5 years is about another $15 million. I think it's $65 million worth of commitment just to the teams over 5 years that essentially isn't there now at all.
No.
There's not only that, they have to pay. So that's our side of commitment to them, to our belief in them and how valuable we see the teams being as part of this. And so, we hope that they believe in that, come on board the journey with us, see that they can grow into something globally. And absolutely, we want those guys to make money. We want those guys to have teams that are worth millions in years to come. Because if there's only 10, and in 3 to 5 years' time we have a global sport like a MotoGP size sport in Supercross, then each of those teams is going to be worth serious cash, and that's good. We need them to do that, and that's the way that it just filters down. Like the people that we're talking to now, like there's a lot of business people that are seeing this as a potential great business opportunity. But for that business opportunity to be successful, they're going to need to win, or they're going to want to win. So then they're going to be competing for the likes of Cooper Webb or Jason Anderson or Eli Tomac, and it creates a competitive marketplace of people willing to pay the dollar for the riders, which pushes their value up. So over time we and then it puts the onus on that team to generate global sponsorship to be able to afford to justify to offer. Cooper or Eli or Ken Roxon or Chase Sexton or whoever it is, Jason, the money that they deserve. It's a competitive market from around the world, not just in one country. Because right now you've got the American distributors of those brands, and that can only push the budget so far, right? Because they're only coming out of a US budget. They can only afford so much. Yeah. But if it becomes, you're seeing it from a global level and there's global sponsorship dollars, then that can increase, significantly. And that's how we think that those guys will be paid the money that they deserve.
And the riders will be world champion. The teams will be world champion. So they'll have a legacy with them. Yeah. You win the world championship in 2022, you've got that with your franchise. That's your legacy.
Like the Constructors
Championship. So if you're
almost,
successful, obviously, and someone's considering buying a team, they're going to go with the teams that have been successful. They've obviously got their shit together, right?
Yeah.
And then likewise, we're going to celebrate being a manufacturer world champion. So give manufacturers globally the ability to market that they're a world champion, and use that is going to be really important. So we've got 3 world championships for the different, obviously, categories, but that's really critical as well and needs to be celebrated. And it's been very successful in Formula One for that reason, the constructors or the teams championship, because it's something else. It's another storyline, right?
Yeah.
And it links with the team and their legacy. So it's really important to have that, and then celebrating the manufacturers. There could be 9 or 10 manufacturers in Supercross in the future. So you want to be able to celebrate, and they'll want to fight for being a world champion in Supercross if we establish this World Supercross Championship as we plan to. that's going to be really lucrative for them as well for motorcycle sales.
Yeah.
And also, like the whole team, the purpose of doing it this way is that the team, what makes up a team could be completely different. You know, to Sando's point before, it could be brand led, you know, not manufacturer led, which means, is there any reason why a brand couldn't have 4 riders on different manufacturers?
That's pretty much what I was thinking in my head as we're sort of talking about this.
Yeah,
thing, you know,
and because they want to win the team championship, if one of the guys isn't performing, they sub him out and pull someone in that will. I don't know, like maybe. I guess what we're saying, we're just saying that the door's open for that kind of thinking. You know, the model the way it has been doesn't have to be all the way. If one guy wants to ride on this manufacturer because that's the one he likes and they're going to support him, great. But they've got 3 other guys in that team. They may be on 3 different brands. Yeah, you know, with an overarching sponsor, perhaps. You know, I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be.
Same with Formula One. The bike livery and the rider livery might be more aligned with the sponsor or the team than it is the manufacturer as well, or just the apparel brand. So things may change like that. I mean, you see with Alpine, they're pink because of their sponsor at the moment. We may have pink motorcycles, or we might have like that papaya orange that McLaren have, for example. You know, there's unique colours in Formula One to those teams, and that's really cool because it's generally linked with either legacy of the team or the sponsor. Yeah. And that's something commercially we need to offer. You need to have you might have a one-off bike for one weekend for one sponsor. Yeah. And your whole apparel links with your bike as well. It's not just always just the apparel sponsor, so to speak. Yeah. Or maybe the apparel brand might actually own a team, and then it's all about them and it's on the bike, and the colorways are linked with their apparel. Yeah. It can be both ways. So it's exciting when you talk like that. I think, you know, for us to think about what the future is, because that's obviously where we hope that vision comes, but it's not that hard to break those barriers down.
To me, we want to be the beauty of starting fresh is that there's no baggage. Model the way it is, and it has to be this way, and it's done that way because that manufacturer funds this, which means that they pay the bills. And I mean, that's why Supercross, you know, and Feld couldn't take it internationally when they tried a few years ago, is because the teams and the way the model is and the way it was funded currently is all out of US budget. So all those teams said no thanks, and they said okay, well, because that's the way it was and that's the way it is there. But we're able to start fresh and go, it doesn't have to be that way. We're going to support these teams regardless of what manufacturer that they're on, all equally. They all get the same level of support. So, you know, this guy might decide to have, or girl, by the way, team owners could be female. We're talking to a couple. May decide to have 3 different manufacturers or 4 different manufacturers, or all the one, because they're going to get great support from one of the brands. But it doesn't have to be that way, and they don't have to start by contacting the manufacturer and asking them for a whole bunch of money, because we're providing more support. You know, so it opens the doors for them to do you know, fully branded bikes and things in different colorways, because again, they're less reliant on the manufacturer.
Well, the thing is too, like a dirt bike's fucking $12,000.
It's not that
they're not expensive compared to other motorsport categories, and that's why Adam's getting so much interest, because they're like, you're going to pay how much, and it costs how much to run. Yeah, you know,
compared to other motorsports, there's no comparison.
I have like 4 bikes.
It's awesome because you're making so much money off this podcast.
Yeah, well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm a fucking squid. I've got 4 bikes. It's not that
low barrier to entry for fans too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so again, why, you know, it's not money led in terms of the ability to win. Really, like there's going to be the teams and the HRCs of the world, etc. You know, they might spend next level, but we are also, as part of the model, limiting that, because we're paying the cost of the freight, but we're also saying that we're going to dictate how much freight can come, so and how many people can come. So you can't send 4 data electricians, 2 suspension guys, and 3 engine guys, because we won't allow that.
And 45 spare engines.
Yeah, we'll limit the amount of spares that can come, the amount of bikes.
How about goggle guys, helmet cleaners, man friends, girlfriends?
Girlfriend's always welcome. The rest by application. No, I mean,
just
you know,
in relation to like who can work on the bikes to Adam's point. So you can have 50 commercial people with all your sponsors, or you can be entertaining. Like crew, you know, you can take 100 staff if you want to. But as far as people working on the motorcycle, and where we know over time motorsport's always, you know, even Formula One having to put caps, team owners will spend as much as they possibly can to win. And we need to make these profitable. We need to sort of control them from themselves, you know, and pull them back. So,
and the money then ends up in the riders and the people that,
because again 80-20
exactly
in that split. Are you guys gonna have any I guess obligations rules wise, like homologation, like I want to see some fucking factory bikes.
Do you? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, that's something it's a topic of discussion. We will talk to the manufacturers about that in terms of what ways to follow. I think initially being similar to the US is helpful because obviously there will be riders and teams that are already set up that way.
Yeah.
But there's great arguments both sides, right? Like full factory really, does that... I mean, I don't think that makes such a difference again that the results change that much, but it's really cool.
I just think so storyline wise, and I mean, if you can, I guess it's hard because like, let's say like Eli Tomac Kawasaki wanted a cable clutch, couldn't have a cable clutch. Well, that's not what we do. That's not in the, the rule, that sort of thing. So it's just like, I don't know, is this an opportunity where, because I guess too, it would depend on the type of people that end up owning teams.
Yeah, that's 100% right.
If it's a, like a Lance Stroll kind of guy, then like, yeah, fuck it.
He'll go get the cable clutch. I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
I want you to win.
Exactly. And it's like that to me, I think is kind of cool. And if you've got these people that come in and it's like, they're changing these bikes to where it's like more, rider focused. It's just an element that we sort of just don't have. And I mean, even like, all the bikes are just so similar to each other. It's just it's not really kind of a storyline in our sport.
As well, when they're factory, like I think what we will change is there won't be factory teams. They may have factory support or support from manufacturers, but when there's a factory team, the plastics have to be that color. The bike has to look like the one they're gonna sell. And it's actually quite limiting. But when you've got a private team owner that may have support from whichever factory gives him the best support or he or she that suits their program, then they could. Why couldn't a guy put a Honda front end on a KTM if that's the way he wants to do it and that's what works for them? I mean, it really removes the way it has been is because of the way it's been structured over a long period of time, but it doesn't have to be that way anymore with this. Like, it could change completely.
It's got to be a balance. I think that's a hard one for you because you want to still, to the AMA Supercross discussion we had earlier, you want to still have teams able to test, say Jet's riding a bike in the World Championship that he's testing and progressing to then race in the AMA Championship as well. Like, we do want to have that crossover. So I think it's unique. It's a bit of a balance of both, and I think that's obviously ultimately Adam's decision, but it'll be interesting. But in saying that as well, you're going to have like an advisory panel with the teams. FIM are going to work in with that advisory panel and Adam as well. So I think we'll try and work that balance out, right? Because there's a lot of talk about factory versus production, and you could spend $1 million on a Supercross bike, and it may not be better than $100,000 Supercross bike. That's cool about the sport. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't really have any sort of personal view on it, but I just trust Adam will make the right decision.
I've got regrets over my comment because I just pictured like winners take all bits of bikes being put together, and that's not really what we vision. But I'm just saying that. I guess what we're saying is it just opens the doors for innovation and how this could be. But ultimately, the teams should have more empowerment to make the decisions themselves to win, and that's what we want to see.
Well, you think like, all right, so the Jet Lawrence thing, like riding the bike that he's going to race in Supercross, that makes total sense, right? So then think about you get like, let's say you've got a Abu Dhabi team, and then this dude's got a fuckload of cash, and then he's down to throw it at this bike. They're probably like that Abu Dhabi team, like he's not going to be able to get a Jet Lawrence or a Cooper Webb, or like they're contracted to that factory team. But what's not to say that they don't get a kind of second tier rider, but then you're putting a second tier rider on like a crazy first tier bike, and there is enough to make a difference, so I could just see it being like a little bit of like a shifting landscape to where it's like, okay, so KTM, they have a slot, but they're almost like a factory bike is like a limiting factor. Like, cool, bring your factory bike. It's a piece of shit where we're like in this stadium.
It's interesting. I mean, we don't know. That's the exciting thing, right?
You don't know. And again, it could be this kind of thing where it's like, okay, in the regulations for 2023 state that you can do this and you can't do that, and it's like the minimum weight becomes like 7 kilos lighter than what the other than it was the previous year. And then let's say you go to, and this is all just fully fucking hypothetical, but it's like, let's say you've got a KTM that comes in and then they are getting smoked by this whatever concoction that this
Nami bike, is it Nami? That was the mistake.
Nami
bike.
Dude. But like, let's say they do get smoked by that, or there is some like crazy tech that gets bought in, and then all of a sudden, like, the other manufacturers kind of have to take that a bit more seriously, and then you do see some like real evolution coming into the sport, because right now it's one of, I guess, not like a frustration, but it's like a thing I think about now. It's like, what's the incentive for dirt bike manufacturers to really make the bikes that much better? There's no real incentive. Like, it's got to just kind of stay within this operational window, which is what the AMA Supercross essentially, like, they dictate how good these bikes can be at a consumer level. But it's like, you get to open season, and I think that was the initial point of F1. Like, that's why people raced F1, like Ferrari and McLaren and Mercedes. They raced those because that was the pinnacle. They could develop hybrid electric technology, and the same technology that you now have in a Camry or a Prius, that is from Formula One. There is a trickle-down effect that happens. And I just think nowadays, like, that whole element is just completely missing from our sport. MotoGP is a perfect example of that as well. Like, my Ducati has crazy fucking electronics, just out of the box, that works insane. That's all because of the way that it got tested into MotoGP. It takes a couple years, but it filters down. And I guess just now with like the current rule set, there's not really any incentive for KTM to do that. Like, the bike doesn't need to be this much lighter. The bike doesn't have to do this. The electronics, like, we just got to win this championship, stay within these frame geometries, stay within this package, and we just keep selling it year on year. It's a realist. Dude, the Kawasaki is a 2008 Honda frame. You know,
yeah, I think
hasn't been much.
Really
I think,
interesting point.
Yeah, and I think the market will decide, right? Because we don't really know. That's what's exciting about it, and
it might be a dog shit idea.
Well, we don't know, and that's what's exciting about it. And I think, you know, opening it up to being global and opening up the ways of thinking again, you know, means that innovation can happen. And also, we're excited to have team owners that are innovative thinkers that have been successful in other areas and in other sports and other businesses that are thinking outside the box. You know, because the reality is, you know, in the US, there's factory teams owned by the distributors of the manufacturers in the US. The team managers running, you know, funded by the brands, kind of thing.
Everyone's got to walk in lockstep, from the top down.
Exactly. It's different to a business owner that's an innovator that's had success in other areas that may look at this thing completely differently and go, like, why has it been done this way? We can do it this way over here and completely change the game, you know, and you know, if the product that we build is what we believe it will be, then the manufacturers will see it as an opportunity to develop and sell, and, you know, potentially, you know, how they use it to market to their consumers in the future. So,
well, it'll certainly be an opportunity for development year round on a racing and professional world championship basis, right? Because you're doing the American Championship, then you're doing the World Championship. So the ability for them just to test in racing will constantly be much bigger. And elite competition and a World Championship will always attract the best engineers. It will always attract innovation. You know, to win, you have to innovate constantly all the time. So that's why those elite motorsports do create the best engineering and develop the best ideas, because they're just pushing themselves day by day by day to be the very best. And look at, like, the transformation as an example of Ferrari. You know, where they went to where they are now. And I think the best thing Formula One has done is started to bring in cost caps so it really equalises, and it can't just be this endless money pit. And we're very conscious of that. So I think, provided we work to your points, which are great, but have, you know, really sustainable costs that every team can somewhat afford, that I think that's where you get the true balance. Yeah,
but I just think that the level at which, like, it's pennies on the dollar. Like, let's say you do the same development Scuderia does, but on a CRF 450. Like, it's literally pennies on the, But, you know, so you can, if you put a couple $1 million development into a dirt bike, like, that's fucking crazy. That barely touches a Formula One car.
That's right.
But, you know, and I think that there's just so much room if you get some really cool creative minds, and even stuff that can just trickle down to like the sort of average dirt bike guy.
Totally. It benefits the average dirt bike guy is what you're obviously saying.
Over time, you know,
the technology.
Exactly, over time. And then, you know, I think too that the bigger the market gets, the, I guess, with scale of, you know, selling anything, costs can come down. So like, I think that there's a lot of follow-on effects that can happen by, I guess, like letting people do some crazy shit within, like, because it's like you said, it's the pinnacle, you know. It's not this isn't the series. If it was the series where I could go and qualify for a main event on a CRF 450 that I just bought at a dealership, then it doesn't make sense to have this like crazy kind of, you know, development or ability for teams, or like really loose regulations. But if it's the same rules for these 10 companies, then it's like no one's at a disadvantage now.
Exactly.
As long as it's not $100 million cap, and that, you know, you've got one guy that's going to be able to afford that. If it stays within reason, there's no privateers that are getting fucked over. There's no one that's on the grid loses out to that. Where I think that is the argument in the AMA, is that you go, okay, well, you know, everybody can come and do this. Like, we want to make it fair for privateers. That's not an option. That's not a problem.
And
here.
we love that, but it's we don't think it's right for the World Championship.
It should be everywhere.
It should be elite. And that those 10 teams will have a level playing field based on, you know, what we're putting forward, and then it's up to them to do the best and get their best staff and get their best, you know, knowledge base within there, and but we're saying that it's equal in terms of what they can bring, the people that they can bring, the amount of financial support from us is all completely equal. So they've got to, you know, they'll start from the same place. And that should make for the best racing. But again, the rider is still going to be the biggest factor. So if you really want to win, you're going to have to get one of the best riders from around the world, and that you're going to have to invest to do that.
So how long are we, or how far away are we from like knowing who some team people are?
I think so. Our board meeting's at the end of April, and so I'll present all the expressions of interest that we'll receive over the
April next year.
No, this year.
Oh, this year, April. Oh yeah, we're not in April yet.
So we'll
Fuck, that's close.
It's close. So we'll present it then, and then I think we've left like a 2-week window after that to actually, you know, sign contracts and agreements, and, you know, we'll announce along with series dates and locations in around May, we're saying, aren't we? So but it's getting close, and there's you know, we're getting great interest from promoters and venues around the world, which is awesome, and we'll soon be able to announce some solid dates and venues, which will be great. So the momentum's definitely building, and there's definitely a lot of interest, and we know that we're going to have some of the best riders in the world. You know, I think that's something that, you know, we heard it was, you know, like, are they just going to get B riders, and we're just getting like B rider, like, with all respect, like, world champions, like, the best guys want to be world champions. They do. They want to be the best in the world. They want to be respected for that, and they should get paid accordingly for that. And that's what we expect to attract. You know, we expect to attract amazing teams that will get the best riders, and we'll celebrate them as legit world champions. You know, so it's all starting to, you know, take shape, and slowly, you know, we're breaking down the barriers, and there's a big story to tell, and a lot of education as to, you know, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why we think this whole thing can change. But, you know, we believe in it so much that we're just going to keep going and keep pushing, and we believe we'll get there. So
how's it going to work this year? So the people that line up for this year's races, it's 5 races this year, are they going to be the 10 teams that you'll give the franchises to? Like, so that model is starting straight away. It's not going to be like OzX or whatever.
No, this year. So you know, May, like you said, around May this year, the 10 teams will be announced, the 10 franchise license owners. So that's why we're rewarding them with a lot of financial support to come on board to begin with. And we believe those ones that get on board this year and back us as well, you know, we'll see the financial benefit in the long term. So, you know, they're the ones that we're
like rewarding those that buy into the journey and see the vision. We appreciate that it is just a vision. It's obviously in its inception before year 1, but we know by year 2, everyone's going to be
it's
like,
a different story.
Oh fuck! But those that jumped on board, bought into the senior management team, everything that we're about, everything we're presenting, and what's going to happen, and they believe in obviously the strength of the events we'd already established and how much better they can be, they're going to be truly rewarded. And then ultimately, it's just a buy and sell process. If you want to get in, you got to find someone willing to sell to you next year or the year after or whenever. So even for the manufacturers, if there's no factory teams, they can come in years 2 or 3, but they've got to buy someone out.
Yeah.
Or the manufacturers, if any manufacturer that misses out from being one of these first 10 teams, then they'll have to find a team to run with next year. And that means they're going to have to throw more support at that team for next year, or a team or teams to choose which ones they get. So again, we feel like that'll reward the teams and the team owners that come on board with us now, because as we become more established and as we grow and, Sando's global TV broadcast is announced and things like that, then the brands will really see what the potential is for this, and then those teams will have a great position, because a manufacturer or brand that isn't involved will need to go through them to get involved. They can't just start a team and turn up. That's the difference.
So is there, I guess, because I know you've got to go soon, what is locked in at this point that you can talk about? Like, is there certain venues, countries? Is there anything like that's pretty much squared away that you guys can talk about now, or is there any other like information? Because it's been. I'm excited. I have no doubts. Like, it's just, I know what you guys do from
appreciate that
years and years ago.
You.
So like, to me, I just fully look at this as like, yeah, okay, well, all this shit's happening, so like, how do we just, all right, let's just get on with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's locked in, what's exciting that people can sort of understand for like this year? How many countries am I going to have to fucking book to go to these races at the end of this year? Oh, I'm finally be able to go to some fucking races too, by the way, actually. Excited about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what's locked away that we can talk about?
Well, I think we talk about regions. Like, we know we're going to be in at least 4, maybe 5 regions this year, properly globally, which is important. North America's a big focus, Asia's a big focus, Europe's a big focus, Australia's a big focus for this year. Where in which city in each of those regions we can't announce yet, but we know we'll be in those regions. Also, US is going to be a big focus, whether it's this year or next. We're not 100% sure.
And there's conversations in South America.
Yeah, South America. I mean, lots of different locations in Europe, South America, the Middle East. Obviously somewhere that we'll go to. So, for this year, we know we're going to be at least 4, maybe 5 strong different locations around the world.
Different continents.
All different continents. We hope to sort of lock those in the next couple of weeks. We're going through the due diligence at the moment with regards to the venues, that make sure the dirt's good enough, all the things that need to happen before you can sort of tell anyone and lock those things in. So the great news is there's a lot more venues and locations and cities that want events than we can give.
Coming in a crazy time right now. Like people want shit in their stadium.
Every host city and government wants events back, and particularly a lot of stadia that have had no events, they want content back. So they've got their normal sporting championships that come every year, but then they want music and they want new events. They certainly want world championship events where a lot of people travel. So it's really exciting because a lot of governments are investing in what's after the pandemic now, and we're coming at that exciting time. So we can definitely say that we'll have an event in Australia. We'll have a world championship round in Australia. That's something we can say. I don't think that'll be a surprise to anyone though. And we will look to maybe announce an event or 2 events, between now and May, but we won't formally announce the calendar and the official dates and the official cities until May, possibly June, as we work through everything. And we may then start announcing some events for 2023, this year as well, because there's so many exciting venues and so many cities. It's just the time frame to commit is so short that a lot of them will push to 2023. So we know the championship will likely double or possibly bigger than that in year 2 because of so much interest. There'd be at least 30 possible locations we could go to next year. So it's already really exciting for the future because of that reason.
Ronan, can you please stop clicking that pen?
Oh, can you hear that?
Yes.
It's getting you all wiggy.
I was like, fucking hell.
And
what about riders locked in? There's rumours, but you guys obviously, that's one thing that is another, I guess, like feather in the cap as well. Like Ando talked about it on the podcast, that anytime, like, he just wants to do your events regardless of how fucking over it he is from racing all year and the all the scenarios that would stop someone wanting to travel internationally. Is like all those factors mitigated by just like knowing the way that you guys do events, the way that you guys treat riders. Is there people that are locked in? Like, can people expect like a pretty high level of like racing kind of year one?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's top 5 guys wanting to come, you know, for sure. I haven't heard of a rider that's not interested in coming, but each of them have their own individual challenges when it comes to contracts and what team they're on and whether they can or can't, you know. So you can't sort of possibly put a blanket statement out there. In terms of the teams, they're not contracted yet because we're going through the process now where they're just starting to get invited to with expressions of interest. So we receive those back, take it to the board at the end of April and decide which teams. And part of the team selected will be dependent on which riders that they're contracting as well. So we're saying to the teams, put your best foot forward. What riders are you planning to have, you know? And there's a bit of chicken and egg there because they don't know that they've got a team, so they can't necessarily contract the riders, but they obviously, you know, can say who they're talking to, and it's obviously very confidential. But we know that the top riders from around the world are super engaged and super interested. Some that aren't even racing in the American series, but are incredible global athletes in the motocross space that can ride Supercross really well too. So, you know, we're excited to see how it lands, but as of right now, we can't even tell you which riders exactly because it will depend which teams are selected and who they're talking to, which they're all having their own individual conversations at the moment.
And you're putting in touch a lot of their agents with the team owners, so that a lot of those possible negotiations are happening as well. Like if I had a team, I'd pay this, what would you take? All of that's happening in the background. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of positivity in the background. And obviously it's hard for us to not be able to announce anything, but we feel really confidently that when we can, it's going to create a massive groundswell. Yeah. And that impacts not only the events we announce, but the sponsors we can secure, the broadcasters we're going to announce. So it's a lot of it's coming, and we look forward to announcing. But it's exciting, the conversations we are having, I think, fundamentally. And we know that everyone's interested, to your point. Jason would love to do it. Yeah. You know, he would love to go to the events if he could. We hope to see him there. But to your point, we will be rolling the red carpet out for those riders more than we ever have before. Yeah. And that experience that they've, you know, enjoyed and what we've prided ourselves on with our events and giving them that quality experience, it'll only be better moving forward. That's one thing we can say. It's
I've heard that it's going to be a pretty crazy year for team changes too. So that's sort of like the variable. Just on the AMA level, like there's a lot of noise at the moment of different people going to different teams.
But I think also, you know, we're throwing a variable in there too, because there's the riders that are wanting to potentially shift the way their year looks and what their season looks like. So there's a variable too, because some teams are okay with that, others aren't. Some manufacturers are being forced to think about it that way where they didn't potentially want to before. So, you know, riders are pushing hard to get for their season and their year to look the way they want it to look as well, which throws a whole different variable as to, you know, they may be on a team for in the US and they may be on a different team for the World Supercross Championship. And now what equipment they're on, you know, all that's up to them, but you know, they're trying to figure out whether they can do that at the moment too.
Fuck, it's cool, man. Like, it just knowing the way that it could go down and the scenarios that could play out, it's like, you know, you get let's say like a Jason Anderson, he rides for Factory Kawasaki. It's like, hey, I'm doing Supercross only, and then I'm riding for, you know, this Brazilian fucking gas company in Supercross, like the Lance Stroll of, you know, and I just ride a Cowie. Like he just gets me a Cowie and I do my thing, but I'm not contracted to Cowie for that particular thing.
He might buy his motorcycle or rent the motorcycle off Cowie in the US and fund them to send their personnel. That's the other consideration. It's a bit like Triple Eight Engineering in the V8s. They built cars for the other teams. Yeah. And there's not manufacturer backing for every team, but they all survive financially on sponsors. So it's just a different approach.
Yeah, totally.
So Adam's been saying that to a lot of the team owners as well. There's huge opportunities for the US based teams to potentially be paid to send personnel, to provide bikes, to provide equipment, to provide their specialty. So there is a lot of opportunity for them, even if they still want to manage everything they're doing in the US as well. So it's an add-on for them. We see that as a positive as opposed to, a conflict.
Yeah.
There's no reason why the US factory teams couldn't offset some of their US costs by selling that IP and knowledge and bikes and parts and support to a private team owner racing the World Supercross Championship. And therefore Cowie or whatever it is, Honda, Yamaha, whatever it is being represented on the world stage. But,
being paid to be represented on the world stage.
And the major sponsor might be Petronas or Telefonica or, whatever. It's a global brand. And then they just ride that motorcycle aligned with the rider that he's aligned with and what manufacturer, for example.
So there's whole different ways to think about it. There's all these things that happen in other motorsports that don't happen in Supercross, and there's no reason why not. It just doesn't. But there's as Sando said, Triple Eight's perfect example, because these other supercars teams pay them for their knowledge, pay them for their things. Some buy engines from Walkinshaw, some get them from Triple Eight or whatever. Triple Eight use that money to offset their racing costs, and therefore their business is as much about supplying parts of the other teams, ironically they race against, as it is about racing themselves. And that could happen in Supercross. Why couldn't it? There's no reason why not.
Same as Formula One, Red Bull Racing, Renault engines. Then they've switched to Honda engines. Now there's talk they're potentially aligning with Porsche. Like that could happen in a way as well, where the sponsor may change manufacturer that they're aligned with year in, year out, because they want to be the best and they're not happy with the bike one year, and they change and they just scrap the bike because they're just they're Red Bull Racing, and all they care about is, for argument's sake, the bike that they race on, and they want the best of the years, and they'll just hand pick out of the 7 or 8 that year. Okay, we're riding this. It could be any brand. It could be Telefonica doing that. It doesn't have to be Red Bull, but you know what I mean. So to Adam's point, you break the mold of what's always been done,
and why the team owner and the license holder is better to be a person or a business than it is to be a manufacturer. Because if it's a manufacturer, then that's it. It locks it in, and that's the traditional model. But by being a private person or business, then there is freedom to move. They can change, like we said. The model can be, it can change year to year if they can create a competitive marketplace to get the best deal, the best equipment, the best support. To win races year on year, and that should help raise the level.
And so what's our window for this year?
September to November. So we'll start first or second weekend of September. We won't clash with AMA Motocross, and we'll finish around mid-November. And
we won't clash with Red Bud, is I think the third weekend of September. So we're just navigating around that. There's 2 weekends in September we can have events, and then there's October, November. And we finish on that 18th, 19th weekend, which gives enough time before AMA Supercross as well. And that'd probably be that finale every year, to be honest.
And so what's going to be a win for you guys this year? Like, what's going to kind of be a success year one?
I mean, just epic events. No matter what, we're not going to do any half-assed events. I think the number one thing is that wherever we go, that has to be epic. They have to be at a world-class standard and to what our expectations are, which are really high. Same goes for broadcast. Same goes for the teams and the riders involved.
So just like Marvel's the standard.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. So, we have incredibly high standards. You'd rather do less events and make them just absolutely kick ass, because we know you only have one shot to make a first impression, right? And we feel like this is our opportunity to do that again, and it has to be at the highest level. So our expectations are just to blow it out of the park, to be honest with you. We don't have any option.
It'll be the best events we've ever run. We can guarantee that, and they'll be one in each continent. And they'll have incredible broadcasts, and everything will be elevated because of the team we have and the personnel and the financial capital that we have. So we truly feel, before we've even done these events, that this will be a success that leads into the next year, but we're very conscious that this is a 3-year, 5-year journey. It's not 1 year and it just smashes it out of the park, and then next year's just no dramas. Like, this is going to be a really hard, tough slog for the next 2 to 3 years, and it always is for a new sporting company. I mean, even MotoGP, when it first came in and took on the established 500cc championship, which was an established championship that predominantly raced in North America, it took them years to get to where they obviously have gotten to over, they're over 20 years now. So we know it's a long road, But to Adam's point, first impressions count. So we're not going to do any sort of B or C level events. These are going to be the best, World Championship events that have been produced before. And we're like really excited of how much interest we have now and how many people are already coming on the journey. So we just know it's like a snowball, right?
We know that we'll look back and laugh. I mean, we look back and laugh at the first AUS Open because before we ever did it, we were selling a PowerPoint. Like now, look back, it's a pretty shitty PowerPoint with pretty shitty pictures of just like dudes on bikes because we hadn't had an event yet, right?
Yeah.
And so, but people came with us on the journey and they believed in us, and thankfully it worked out well. And it's literally like that again, where we have, like we said at the start, a really clear vision of what this can be and will be. But we don't have any proof yet, So, thankfully people believe in us and believe in the journey because they've seen what we've done. But at the same time, you're still selling them the dream at the moment, And so we know that which we love, the pressure is on us to deliver absolutely what we say and better than what other people will ever believe that this could be. And that's what we have to do. We don't have a choice but to do that. And then, I won't say it'll get easier next year, but that's how the whole thing starts, right? You just got to start with a blank sheet of paper. We're going to give it absolutely everything, over deliver in every area we possibly can, and we believe people will, come on the journey with us.
There's definitely going to be new innovations, both live event and in broadcast, that the sport hasn't seen before. I can guarantee you that. So there's going to be ways in which we change it up that's going to really excite people as well. So it's not going to just be a better AUS Open. It's going to be something completely different. We've had since 2019 to do all these new ideas that we've had, and now we've got a whole much larger team, a World Championship team, and a financial backing to do it on that level. So we've got a lot of exciting ideas to make these events, elite.
The experience, from exactly the entire experience for how you enjoy Supercross, be it, on your phone, on television, live at the event. We want to completely rethink that and think about that entire experience and how it's immersive in every sense of the word. We're not just going to go out exactly and run the same events that we've done or has been done and just take them around the world. No, we want to completely shake it up. So
I'm here for it, boys. Always here for it.
We've got a AAA access pass waiting for you, mate.
Cheers,
Jace. I was just going to say, there's still time for you and Sam to get a team together and submit it in before the board meeting, mate.
I was thinking that, actually. Can you imagine the kind of... Dude, who would we have? Jats and Stank Dog probably would be like our team, maybe.
Yeah,
we could.
That sounds good.
Maybe Jack Miller.
Now we're into it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Maybe he could be your team owner.
Yeah. Dude,
there's an idea.
All right, we'll go off.
There's still time.
I've got some ideas. Now, as always, I'll be there to support whatever you guys do. For anyone listening to this that isn't familiar with these two gentlemen, they fucking nail it. Everything they do, they kill it. So
thanks, mate.
Thanks for your support,
This isn't just fucking carry on. Like there's some serious work that's like years and years and years and years on like so many different levels that's gone into this. And I think you guys over the last 10 years have just like realistically covered every or like you've worked in every area, whether it's like the TV side, the logistical event side, working with the riders, the marketing side, everything. You guys have touched all of this within your business life and personal life, and so I think that it's a solid team, even just in you guys of people that have spent years kind of building up to this point. So
thanks, mate. We appreciate it. And I mean, ultimately we're fans. We're just so passionate. We believe in it so much that we just want this thing to go around the world, and that's our mission. Yeah,
and we're investing in amazing people to work with us and be on part of the team. To your point, it's amazing people that work with us on AUS Opens. There's incredible people joining the team now, which is really exciting. So we're looking forward to it, man, and thanks for all your support.
Yeah, no, I'll and I think too, like people, just the fucking views that we get of talking about racing. Like there's an economy in talking about racing, and what do we need? Fucking races.
Totally, yeah.
So like there's this
and storylines.
Exactly. This is just a whole new opportunity. I mean, this will probably give birth to channels all over the world, new media from different countries, and I'm excited with I know the reach and the global kind of appetite for it, and I think that to have it's like a canvas to kind of paint on, you know what I mean? Like this is just like a new canvas that we kind of that we all get to work with. So
totally, mate.
Definitely exciting time.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No dramas, boys. We'll talk
Legend,
soon.
bro.
Sick. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.